Welcome to Thriving in Construction, the podcast. Today, we delve into the extraordinary journey of Gary Arkin, a luminary in the construction and precast industry. Born in 1961 on the vibrant streets of Miami Beach, Gary's path led him from law to construction, marking the beginning of a transformative career. In 2010, seizing an unprecedented opportunity, he acquired a small cast stone company in Delray. And this move birthed Premier Precast, evolving from a $1 million enterprise to a $15 million powerhouse, showcasing his commitment to innovation across 6 product lines. Gary is the founder and driving force behind Premier Cast. Not only leads the company, but also stands as a recognized U.S. leader in the architectural applications of ultra high performance concrete. And his influential roles in the board of directors for the Architectural Precast Association, Construction Association of South Florida, and Construction Executives Association underscores his dedication to shaping the future of construction. Please join us in unraveling the story of Gary Arkin, the visionary leader who turned adversity into opportunity, leaving an incredible mark on the construction landscape. How are you?
I am doing great, Patricia. How are you?
I am doing amazing. I am so blessed to have you here in our podcast. And I have to confess, I didn't know much about you other than you were working in one of our projects. But as I learned a little bit more, it was fascinating to see the journey that you have, and entertaining your professional career. You started one way and you end up being in our construction job site. So I want to hear all about it. Welcome to Thriving in Construction, the podcast. This is an avenue that we have to share knowledge to people that don't know that much about the industry, and people that want to learn what you cannot learn at school or in the university. So feel free to share your knowledge, your wisdom, failures, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm flattered that you invited me to be here. So it's I guess I never looked at the story as being that interesting, but when you actually put it down, I guess it is fairly interesting. The one thing, at least, that people will know is that you can never not pivot, right? So you can always make changes in your career. And so I did. I've actually had a couple of very nice careers across my life. And it did start out, I'm actually a native of Miami Beach, Florida, born and raised down there. And had gone to the University of Texas. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Like so many people that are in college, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? So I just decided I better take a liberal arts degree, and economics was the way to do it. My dad was a lawyer. My brother was a lawyer. And what do you do with an economics degree coming out? Well, I guess I'll go to law school. I'll become a lawyer, right? So ended up going to law school at the University of Michigan. And I got out and I started practicing law. And I didn't enjoy it. I thought, okay, well, maybe it's the type of law that I'm practicing. So I changed the company, changed the law firm. I went to a different law firm, and I realized, nope, I don't think it's the law firm. I think it's the law. And so I'm sitting in a building on Brickell, like one of the original office buildings on Brickell.
So wait a second. I want some perspective here. So from the time you graduated from law school, how old were you?
I was 24 years old.
To the time that you're sitting in Brickell asking yourself the next question you're going to share, how long was that?
2 years, 26 years old.
2 years, okay.
I practiced law for 2 years. And okay. as I sat at my desk, behind me, they were building what was then a Barnett Bank Tower. Okay, on Brickell. It's now Wells Fargo. It went through Wachovia at Wells Fargo. And so I'm watching every day. I go to my window and I'm watching them build this. And I'm going, God, that just looks so cool. This is really neat what they're doing. And then in front of me, the client that was sitting at my desk was a young guy, my age, a year older, 26, 27 years old. And he was developing an auto services shopping center, Jiffy Lube, Precision Tune, things like that. And I was just one stop on his day. And I realized I am on the wrong side of the desk, right? And so I said, you know what, I've got to go do something completely different. And I quit. I went to Purdue University and got a degree in construction management. I was able to
Wow.
do it in 2 years because I had enough college credits from before. I didn't have to go for another 4 years. Uh,
Right.
so that by the time 1990 came around, I guess I'm 28 years old at that point, I graduated and moved into the construction industry, never to turn back. Right now, there have
Wow.
been minor pivots within that, mind you, but I've been in the construction industry now since 1990. So
Wow. So, but knowing what I know about construction, and I'm sure you probably will agree that economics helps you a lot with the financial management of the project, and the law degree helped you a lot with the risk management side. So it's almost like a perfect journey to then end up being construction managers, because many times people go through construction management and they never, even through their experience, they never develop the savviness, the of understanding risk and how to even protect yourself, and also the financial side, which our industry, I say that it's not that we build it. We are in a business of managing cost, managing cash flow, and managing risk that can kill your company in an instant. So I love the fact that you went through that route. You were super young, and but more than anything, I love the fact that you went for what you wanted. And a lot of times people don't do that. Oh, what are they gonna say? This is my third degree, this and the other, excuses, excuses. But you went for your dream. Talk to me about that.
yeah, so when at that point I had met my wife, so you get to that point where it's okay. I better get this one right. I don't know that I have another shot to make that kind of a change, but it's where the passion was, and you made an important point. At no point along the line did I regret the initial decisions that I made. They truly were building blocks to get to what I was ultimately going to do. Right. So
Yeah,
the economics degree was incredibly valuable. The law degree is incredibly valuable. What law really teaches you is a way to think, a way to approach problems, a way to communicate both in the written word and the spoken. Um, and, certainly it helps you evaluate risk. And so all the things that you decide to do, whether you're working for somebody or ultimately begin to own your own company, these are all important things in terms of how to be successful, how you communicate, how you think, how you control risk, are really the essence of any job any of us do. And so they are important building blocks. And to this day, I have zero regrets about any of the steps I took along the way. Divine intervention, whatever it was, it worked out really, really well for where I wanted to end up. So I never encourage people not to go get that law degree, whether they want to practice law or not. Engineering degrees and law degrees are really very similar. One just teaches you how to think with numbers. One teaches you how to think with words. But the thought process that goes into both of those types of degrees are very, very similar and really important to, when you're in the construction industry in terms of how you approach and evaluate problems, how you solve problems, because they happen every day, right? So it's all about the
of
solution.
course, of course, of course. And it also tells you not only that you have been guided somehow, and that you had the awareness to be able to say, you know what, I don't like that, and you know what, I think I'm gonna like this, and you went for it and you took action. Sometimes, I mean, somebody would have listened more to the naysayers or the obstacles in the way, but you instead went right away for it. And if you think about it, before 30, you had 3 degrees, already were working in construction, and 30, you're not even, I mean, I say that you really start figuring out who you are, what you want in your 30s. So no waste of time in my eyes.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's been a lot of fortuitous things along the way. And then, I started out, the first construction job I had was actually with a home builder in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hopefully not because of me, but they ended up going bankrupt. So I got to taste sort of the success and failure of a home builder. One of the teachers at Purdue was associated with Hensel Phelps, so I then left and went to Hensel Phelps. So I was able to get the commercial side of it. But ultimately, I started to raise a family. I was living in New Mexico with Hensel Phelps over at White Sands Missile Range. And I realized, I've got to make a living. I got to support a family. And so I needed to get back to the state of Florida, because that's where my licenses were, my law license, ultimately my general contractor's license, were all here in the state. And I knew that Florida was where I needed to make my home. And I was able to get back and ultimately went to, there's a big private home builder called GL Homes. And I ended up developing a career with them for 15 years, becoming one of their senior executives. And that's really, honed a lot of the skills and was able to channel a lot of the, where my ambitions were through them. That was a really, really well-run business over there. So,
yeah, they're a pretty proven company.
Yeah, the most important thing that I probably learned over there, in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, because Ichko Ezrati is really just brilliant, but the most important thing I don't think that anybody really realizes about them, you go into a management meeting and an issue gets brought up, some type of a customer issue or whatever, a public company, they can only throw so much money at an issue. When an issue was brought up at GL Homes, money never came up. The only question that ever came out of Ichko Ezrati's mouth was, what's the right thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
You can't make a mistake. Beautiful. Yeah, when you can't make a mistake with that, right? And so, I'm sitting in for 15 years, these management meetings over there, in which the question's always, what's the right thing to do? And, that really has an influence, because I remember one time there was a homeowner who had referred somebody. And this was a homeowner they couldn't make happy. I couldn't make happy for the life of me. Kept trying. And I called him up and I said, thank you so much for the referral, but I got to ask you, I've tried so hard to make you happy and I've not been successful. He goes, you've never stopped trying. And he goes, if you do this for my friend, they're going to have a great experience. Right? So this effort of always doing the right thing, of ceaselessly trying to have that level of customer satisfaction, right, by doing the right thing, results in repeat and referral business, and it's something that you cannot ever lose track of. The morality of how that company was run has indelibly marked me, as well as just the fact that I have a family that's been, my dad just passed last year, he'd be 94. So I've had family on Miami Beach for 89 years. The name is everything, right? Our name is everything. And so when you have the importance of your name and your family name, and you value that along with these lessons that you learn by just great role models, like Ichko Ezrati at GL Homes, you begin to build your own foundation, the right way. We talked about the bricks of having economics and law, but it's also the bricks of having the right role models coming up as you're learning your career, and there's a responsibility for me and for you. What do we do for the people that are coming up underneath us that are going to run our businesses down the road? Are we giving them those same building blocks for success?
Yeah. Are we being the same type of mentors? But so here's another area where you could have ended up being in a different company. And so I choose to believe that there's some guidance, divine guidance in your life, because you could have ended up being in a company that, instead of asking what's the right thing to do, and there's never enough to do to maintain our client happy, you could have been with somebody that it was more, the other way. And I know what I'm talking about without putting names. So that it saves you a lot of time and a lot of money, actually, because, as you said, as business owners, if we worry more about, first of all, aligning with clients that mirror our values, or that we mirror their values, it's an easier type of of communication and relationship. But at the same time, if we are convinced that we are in business because of them and we want to make them raving fans of our organization, you're absolutely right. It's easier to keep a client than to acquire a new client. So if you keep a client, right, you don't have to be chasing for work as much as if you didn't worry about keeping the client happy. That's why he brilliantly had everyone focus on that. And then the other part is when you say what's the right thing, and that question for so many people is so difficult to answer. And the reason is because fear gets in the way. It's not because everyone has the capacity to be really good and really bad. We all do. But if fear dominates your life, that question will not be necessary. You won't have the right answer many times because fear gets in the way. But if you live your life, and it seems to be, I don't know him, Gary, right? I don't know him, GL Homes president, but I would assume without knowing him that his life is more governed by gratitude than fear. That
100%.
than when he walks in his steps, gratitude is more what he sees than the fear of what can go wrong. And so even though things go wrong, so I it's very commendable, and I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm going to build on one other story from there that I've learned, and it's something that I tried so hard to teach within here. You talk about fear. So, and fear is definitely paralyzing, and paralysis is what hurts companies probably more than anything else. And so, let's just say that I was opening up a community division in Naples, Florida. I started their Naples division. And I had to go in and make a presentation for what the community was going to look like, what product lines we were going to put in there, the recreational amenities, the model road, the entrance feature, the whole bit. And then for the next 6-8 hours, everybody at that management table, and led profusely by the owner, Ichiko Roddy, proceeded to question and rip apart every single thing we put together, right? Not to make me feel bad, right? Because at the end of it, what do? Ichiko says, okay, go make your decision. He wasn't trying to influence the decision. All he was trying to do is to make sure that you had thought about every possible avenue, that you had really given a 360-degree thought, right? And then completely trusted you to make that decision, knowing that you may very well make a mistake in that decision. But he didn't want you to be fearful of making a mistake. He wanted you to be confident in the decision you're making because you had thought about it 360. He was never going to tell you the decision to make, because if he does that, he owns that responsibility. He wants you to have that responsibility because it's the only way that you can personally grow, right? And it's something that I actually teach inside my company is, I don't want people to live in fear. They can't make a bigger mistake or more costly mistake than I make. Right? I make way bigger and more costly mistakes than anybody in here will ever make. The only way the company moves forward is if you put people in positions of responsibility and allow them to do it. But they have to learn that in our industry, in life, forget our industry, in life, we are fallible, right? And so we're going to make mistakes. I was explaining before, there are 3 lessons I have learned as an entrepreneur. And the first one is humility, because I don't know. I don't know. The second thing I learned is fear, because I don't know what I don't know. And the third thing I learned is religion, because I pray to God it doesn't cost me as much next time as it did last time. Yeah. Right? But that's just the reality. We do live in an industry that's ever changing. And so we don't know, and that's okay. But we can't be so scared as to not make a decision. You just have to learn to understand the risk and control the risk. Maybe try to tilt the playing field a little bit in your side so that it doesn't cost you so much when it goes wrong. But we'd all be billionaires if we could learn how to do these businesses without making mistakes. But then it comes back to what you were asking, with the right thing to do. You're going to make the mistake. So what are you going to do when it happens? And if you always do the right thing, that customer is never going to abandon you, because they know and they trust you're fallible. We understand that, but I can also count on you to do the right thing when that mistake happens.
Yeah. And I will take it a little bit further to your three learning lessons in the industry, which is very, very simple. I would add to that communication piece,
Mm,
because sometimes it's important to share that we don't know. Sometimes it's important to allow the other person, maybe the opposite side, let's say, if there is one, that there is I don't know. We all save time and money when we are able to express that, right, with humility.
right.
And to me, it's not a people don't I think there's a lot of ego in our industry, because it's a male dominated industry, only because of that. And a lot of times women that are in the industry, I'm going to say this carefully, sometimes they want to have that identity, because it's hard to compete, right? People technically, they're very judged right away. We are. I mean, I've been there. I've been doing this for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we have to. I think we have to be who we are, and integrity at its core, it's so valuable, right? Being integrous with your word, being integrous with your actions. And if you don't know, you don't know. And if you made a mistake, say it as soon as possible, so that we can fix it as soon as possible, right? Because the client will make a mistake, the architect will make a mistake, right? The trade partner will make a mistake, we will make our employees will. There's going to be a hurricane, there's going to be COVID, there's going to be, who knows. This industry, I always said, Murphy loves construction. So, and
I
you're
think
right about
I think he was
prayer.
born here. He was born here.
You're right about the prayer part. Let me tell you, this industry has transformed me spiritually. I do not leave my house without meditation, and I go to bed meditating, otherwise I couldn't sleep.
Right. You know, you
So
mentioned that on the communication, and you're absolutely right. That's actually in our core values, right? One of our core values is to own it, right? Because it is something that is going to happen. And so you have to be able to own that to your team. And then another one of the core values is to be the solution, so that when you do own it, you do have a problem, everybody is not blaming, but instead banding together to figure
yeah.
out how to do the right thing to get to that final solution that's going to make that customer happy.
Well, you
So
mentioned something else, blaming, and I don't want to let that pass. So before, when you finish your thought, let's go back to that blaming piece, because a lot of people don't realize how much blaming happens in our industry.
oh
People focus more on the problem than the solution, and the pointing fingers.
yeah, it is a real factor, which the blaming, and it goes along hand in hand with the issue that you raised regarding communication, right? But again, it's that whole part about understanding that you're going to be fallible. And I don't know, people seem to be so worried about, I didn't make this mistake, it's their fault, right? At the end of the day, the problem has happened, and why the problem happened is not relevant. It's just not relevant. You just have to get to a solution. Nobody's going to remember who caused what or why that happened. They just are going to remember that the company was there when they needed to be there. The people were there, that they got the job done, that the job is beautiful. It's like making sausage, right? You don't want to watch how sausage is made, but you like the taste of it, right? And so sometimes it's like that. And so, yes, too often, and it's something that we have to really work hard on with people. They get so worried about, covering themselves. And it bothers me on the communication side too, because, I'm a big believer that you pick up a phone or you go out and meet with somebody in person. It's face to face, like you and I are doing right now. It's going to be a very different conversation, you and I on a Zoom conversation, than it would be if I was typing all this out to you. You can see
Of
my
course.
facial expression. You know if I'm angry or upset, if I'm trying to teach, if I'm doing whatever. There's so many nonverbal cues that people can pick up in that. And then if somebody needs to confirm something, then they can write one person and they can just send a quick email. Hey, confirming our conversation. If you understood it differently, let me know. When you start to write 15 people, everybody thinks you're trying to show somebody up, you're going to piss somebody off, it's going to be something you've written it in a way that they like, especially me, like I'm a lawyer. The lawyer never left the fingers. It's not in my mouth so much, but it never left my fingers. I write an email, I am going to anger somebody. And not because it's in my heart, it's just what's in my fingers, right? And so now it's, fingers can make it sound like blame. People are worried about it, but you're right that those two things together, between the blame and the communication, are really, really important lessons for people to learn, that we have to not do digital first, but digital last. And
Yeah,
really,
it's
because we
true.
can't lose the ability to talk to people face to face, especially with so many wonderful tools, even like this. I mean, I can just get on a phone call with you and say, hey, Patricia, we have an issue. Can we discuss it? And it's just
Yeah.
a totally different conversation than if I'm writing an email.
From and I guess this is turning a little bit onto something we didn't think about, but knowing your background and the knowledge that you have acquired through these years, not only in business but also the handling of people and conflicts. In reality, I think people in our industry, they rather do the email or the letter, because I've been in environments like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a way, it makes you feel significant when you have an operation with someone and you haven't done a lot of healing in yourself. You emotionally, you put a lot of emotion into a letter, and it makes you feel like you got it. um but in reality, when, to your point, when we're talking and we're looking at each other face to face, and I see your smile or not your smile, and we can connect with the fact that you have 3 degrees. I already can connect with you at levels that I couldn't before. Even we even gave you a contract, which is something I definitely would want to change. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know these things about you. This is why we're doing this, because not only you have the knowledge and expertise that we want to share, but also it's an opportunity for us to meet and know each other more and be efficient also with our time. But here's the thing: if I want to influence you and we have a disagreement and I am choosing a letter, there's no way that letter is there's going to be a positive outcome. Instead, if, to your point, I get the phone or I meet with you in person, which is even better, I'm able to connect. And there's no way to influence anyone if there's not a connection. The first thing to do to have influence someone is connecting. And
Right.
leadership is all about connection. We even have employees that we don't know what's the deepest desires of their hearts, and there's no way to influence them to follow the direction that you want, not in a dictatorship way. I know what you mean when you say but in a way that you are out of the office and they're doing what you want. So connection is key, communication is key, and Gary, it's about culture.
It is
What you
about
have described is culture. You have it in your values.
it
It's
is
not
culture.
a
But you raised an important thing about the conversation, and so let me say this. What I think the most important statement that's missing, that people miss, is not the statement, but the question. So what you have to understand is, most people, if you really take a chance, like if I'm doing a contract negotiation with somebody, I need to understand where they are coming from. I need to ask questions of them. You, as a general contractor, there are, maybe in your prime contract or whatever it is, or experiences you've had, you have an opinion of something. And if I can't ask questions and dig into that and understand it, I'm never going to be able to assist in finding a solution to something. And so too often we're talking, but not listening. And
Mhm.
so you have to be able to say, let me go ahead and ask the right questions of people, right? So that I can best understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Because we can always find a solution once we understand each other's position. Common ground becomes far more visible. We're too busy
Absolutely.
talking, we're not asking. The question is by far the most important thing that has to happen. and we just sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, so
I
lesson.
couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad we're working together. I'm glad we were working together and talking about questions.
Yes.
Tell me how you ended up starting your company. How did that happen? How was that journey about?
Well, that's interesting. So I love GL Homes. I will tell anybody that it was, in terms of a place to work, it was an absolutely fantastic place. And so I didn't leave them because I was dissatisfied with them. But it was a family-owned business, and as a family-owned business, you're never going to get an equity stake. And so, at some point, I just came to that realization that I wanted to get an equity stake in a business, and there was a private equity firm that had an interest in a cast stone company. And now I'm thinking in my mind, oh, I'll go with the private equity firm, because I'm pretty good at operating businesses. I'll go with the private equity firm to this cast stone company, and then to their next business, and then to their next business. Private equity doesn't want that. Unless you bring a lot of money with you, they're going to actually sell you off with that company. So I got there, they had me let go the president. I actually took over at the company, and about a year and a half in, they came up to me and said, look, we don't want to own this business anymore. We're going to either shut it down unless you want to buy it. At this point, this was never a thought in my mind. In fact, I will admit that I had actually uttered the words, I would never own a cast stone company. And then this opportunity comes up. It's like, okay. So I said, I don't want to own that business because I didn't like its history. So I said, here's what I'll do. I'll buy the assets of the company, and I'm going to start my own business. Because as a private equity firm, they had gone off model. They had gone away from cast stone. They were trying to make outdoor kitchens. They were trying to do things that had nothing to do with, because they were trying to sell it to an old castle or whatever. And I wanted to get back to being a pure architectural concrete company. I thought that's where the market was. And so in 2010, I had, you talk about major blessings. In 2010, I actually met my wife, and I bought the assets of the company to start what we call Premier Stoneworks at the time. And so 2010 was really the greatest year of my life because I was able to do these two things in the same year. But yeah, that's how it happened. And so I ended up buying the assets, started my company, and we were only about $1 million revenue. We were a little bitty cast stone company, we were certified. We were like any of the other small cast stone businesses out there. I just had a little bigger grandiose plan, and I wanted to grow it. But there were a lot of lessons to get learned along the way, but between where we were then and where we are now, which we can get into as you want to. And but that's how it happened. So I ended up buying it from the private equity firm. They left, and so now this year we celebrate our 13th birthday.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm very excited for what you guys are doing and where you're going. So tell me about the lessons learned.
Yeah, so the first thing, the biggest lesson I learned that first year, because I almost, like I say, anybody who ever's owned a business, you've been to the brink. You have to look into the abyss of failure and realize that this is not so easy to own a company. And so that first year, I learned that there's a difference between understanding how to read financials and building a business model based on financials. And so I had all my hard costs right that first year. But what I didn't understand was that 20% of our cost of goods sold were non-allocable to jobs like electric, the propane that runs a forklift. You can't take that and put that to a job. So when we set up the business model, we never put that 20% cost factor in there. So the first year, we ended up breaking even on operations and lost all of our overhead. Well, almost lost my company the first year. Just not, that's the difference between being an employee and being a business owner. So,
yes.
So that's why I say, the things like you don't know and you don't know. So we learned that, and we ended up coming back from that. And then the next thing was that you have to begin to understand, you can go out there and you can just be a business, or you can begin to understand market segmentation, right? Where do you fit within a market? So there's always going to be competitors, but where do you actually fit inside that? And so everybody was sort of fighting for the same piece of the puzzle. And I said, if we fight the same piece of the puzzle, we're going to fight our way to the bottom. What we need to do is we need to fight our way to the top. So the next thing I said was, all right, why don't we, let's get involved in all of the organizations, CASF, ABC, CEA, AGC, all these organizations, which I'm a big believer in. One of the most important formulas for me in business is taking an overhead expense, you divide it by your gross margin, that's your break even. So just in easy numbers, if it was $2,000 to join an organization and it was 20% gross margin in your business, you need $10,000 of sales as a result of that membership for it to break even. That math made complete sense to me. And any job that you were going to get is going to be more than $10,000. So and to this day, I suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out. I was at an event this morning. I do not miss going to networking events. And every single time I go, there's another amazing business opportunity. So one of the great bits of advice I have for anybody is get involved, stay involved, go to these organizations, because people want to hear your story. They want to do business with you, but they're not going to if they don't know you. This is a relationship industry. And so, listen, honestly, we all met at an ABC showcase a few years ago. It's how I met Lunicon. And so it's going to these events and doing those relationships is really an important part of what it is that we do. The next step in that evolution was I felt we needed to distinguish ourselves by becoming a certified plant. Now, in that day, I was a single product line company. We were just doing cast stone. Cast stone are your trims, window sills, columns, balusters, things like that, small pieces. And there was a certifying organization, the Cast Stone Institute, and we got certified by the Cast Stone Institute. We were the only plant in the state of Florida so certified, because we felt like that gave us a little bit more credibility, because my market segment was I wanted to start to move to the larger projects in terms of with the general contractors. And we started to develop quite the niche, and we moved from, I want to say, about $1 million in revenue up to $4 million in revenue, and finally up to about $8 million in revenue. Right. So that's how we sort of grew. It was through that whole networking side and through getting certified. And then I let you ask a question, then I'll tell you how we ended up taking the next big step.
Aren't you like 15 million now?
Yes. So here's what happens. So we start building it. We go from 1 to 4 to 8. Now 2016 rolls along. 2016 was the election between Clinton and Trump. Business for us dropped in half, sold half. The next year we had a hurricane, continued to sell half. And I'm in that period in 16, and I'm going, okay, there was a book a gentleman by the name of Ram Charan had written. I forget the name of the book, but in the book, he talks about fishing in a larger sea, right? The way you have to grow your business is you have to fish in a larger sea. The precast industry tends to look at it as being, I'm either going to, I'm going to be a cast stone company, or I'm going to be a large panel company, let's say like Gate Precast. And I felt like that was a fairly limited way to look at the industry. If you think about an electrician, you think about a drywall company, they have work on every project. A cast stone guy is fighting for 5% of the projects that are out there. Not very many jobs have cast stone. If you include all precast, maybe 15% of the projects have precast.
Mm-hmm.
So how, as a precaster, can I be like an electrician and have work on 100% of the jobs being built? That was what I tried to do differently than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to look at any project that's getting built and have scope of work. Obviously, I'm not going to get it. Couldn't do it all if even if I could, but that's what we decided to do. So we just had a little bread mixer is how we were operating. And so now I needed to upgrade. I had to go out and put in a computer operated batch plant, and I had to upgrade systems and processes and people and the whole bit. and we gave up our Caststone Institute certification and we went for the Architectural Precast Association certification so that we were certified on all the architectural product lines. Right. So the Caststone Institute only did cast stone. The APA does cast stone, GFRC, and precast panels, shapes. So we were able to do that. So, and this is a process. Like once you start on that type of diversification, that diversification plan isn't done overnight. It's taken me 5 years. We're now here in 2023 and we're driving revenue. I've talked to just about a couple of them, but we actually have 6 different product lines because here's what we did. You do a building like RD Las Olas. It's a glass and steel building. Where's the precast? There's a center core of stairs that runs up that building. So we do precast stairs for shell contractors. They love it. It makes it so easy for them. They're always right. They don't have to make forms, right? What about a warehouse? Where's the precast on a warehouse? There's all the light fixtures that are going around it. They have a pole base. They have a foundation that goes underneath the light pole. In fact, I live in Hallandale. I drive home by an O'Reilly Auto Parts getting built. I should have no scope on O'Reilly Auto Parts. They have 2 of my pole bases sitting out in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, there's not a job that gets built in which I don't have multiple possible scopes, right? I can do something. And that's where it's really, I wish I could say I was so omniscient, but I knew I needed it. That was the idea behind it. But then once it actually started happening, we'll not only now get a job, let's say that has, cast stone, like $1 million of cast stone. But in addition, I may get $600,000 of stairs and $300,000 of pole bases. So what would be for a regular precast for $1 million of work, I'm getting $2 million of work because they're packaging 2 and 3 things. Is it a meeting today? Like I said, a networking event, they're not even thinking of anything. We start talking about precast stairs. By the end of it, they realized they had precast stairs, they had panels and benches, right?
Yeah.
It's there. There's so much things. And so now not only do we have the opportunity to be diversified in our scope, but also to get multiple product lines in any individual building as well.
Yeah.
So it really did grow to 15 million because now you're not operating off one product line or the other. And when you think about it, let's say a gate, they're huge. They do incredible amounts of revenue. They have 60 acres. We're able to try to generate in here. I think we can get up to about 20 million, if not a little bit more, on 2.8 acres. And that can only happen with diversification because I can have different product lines working in different areas. If it was all big precast panels, I would choke myself off because I wouldn't be able to store it. But by having my different areas in my plant, I can run 6 product lines and it ends up growing itself onto the revenue side. So it's been a pretty interesting journey. Like I said, it started in 2016 in that election because I just watched my revenue get cut in half. And I said, I have to fish in a different sea, a larger pond. And, the idea of, like I said, treating ourselves like an electrician, was the key. I'm in Vistage. I don't know if you've ever heard of Vistage. Vistage is a group of business owners.
Yes, I am.
And one of the lessons I learned in Vistage was, the key to being successful in business, a lot of people think it's cost control, but it's really not. You need a good gross margin percent, but the key is the revenue side. The people that I saw making money had grown the revenue side of their business. At some point, you're chasing smaller and smaller things to try to do it. Once you need a labor efficiency, that's the most important thing because for most of us, labor is the biggest cost we have. So if you can get labor efficiency, that maximizes your gross margin, but you can really grow that revenue side. You can have a very, very nice business. And so I really focused on growing the revenue side of the business. And the only way that was going to happen was through the diversification plan that I put together.
Right. Yes, I agree with you. Only if you have processes, because capacity to fulfill the revenue side is very important. So if you grow exponentially without any level of control, it can be a disaster. So I also heard you say that you had that in 2016. You had to also focus on processes.
Yes.
You had to do that too. You did focus on the top line, but process is important because growing a cancer, it's not a good strategy.
Right.
If you had, right, I'm sure you learned that somehow,
No, it's
somewhere.
huge. And so we even have a go, no go process. So I talked a little bit earlier, I mentioned the word market segmentation. We can't do everything, and we're not right for everybody. So we're a certified plant, which means I have certified batch plant personnel, certified quality control personnel. I have to have expensive people in here. I have to have very sophisticated processes, because the one thing that a general contractor cares about more than anything, being on time, right? That's their pain to be solved. The worst thing you can do to a general contractor is be late. So how do you have your systemic processes in place? So now, once you understand the pain to be solved for the general contractor, right, who's our primary customer, or the shell contractor if it's stairs or whatever, but your customer is always interested in that time, then what we had to do is we had to put up what we refer to as bumpers, but basically this go, no go process. I'm not the right guy to go after a small cast stone job, because the nature of our processes are such that it's going to cost a certain amount of money, and it works better for jobs that are larger. So we've learned where to say no, because we can't be profitable for our customer. Or let's say a big precast job. If it's a 500 panel job, they need to go to, let's say, a gate precast. I can't store that type of a job. So you have to understand what you can and cannot do. Once you find those things, your market segments, you actually can really drive a higher margin, because you've now found the places that are unique to what your skill sets are, right? And so that helps to create what you're talking about. That process that you have in place helps to define your market segment so that you can be successful for your customer within that market segment, right?
Right. And also along that line as well, I would assume your values too. So here's the follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be your ideal client? And a second question is, have you ever fired a client?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever actually fired a client, but I've definitely, there's people that I won't bid. So I don't know that I've communicated, so the world is an interesting place, because, people change, businesses change, and I never want to burn the bridge. So there are ways for me to not do business with people without having to burn a bridge along the way. So for sure. But yes, in terms of the ideal client, that's a great question. So when we were younger, and we were a cast stone business that was certified by the Cast Stone Institute, trying to do the big cast stone jobs, we were only interested in, let's say, the top 20 GCs, your Coastal, Moss, whatever, right? As we diversified, the beautiful benefit of that for us is that those top 20 aren't going to buy precast from us, because their jobs are big, right? And I can't handle that job. So the precast ends up coming from everybody else. And so now all of a sudden, we're out there working really hard to develop relationships with all the other GCs who have precast needs, that might be doing government work, military bases, schools. Where we're getting our work from, water treatment plant. It comes from all these different places. And so it's a way healthier, right? Because the biggest fear is, especially, let's say, your bonding company, that one of the things they care about is, what's your concentration? I don't want to have all my work with just a few customers and have really big jobs with just a few customers. I'd rather have a little bit smaller jobs spread among many customers in many industries, because also, you have fluctuating industries, so they tend to level it out, and you don't have as much risk. So I know it almost sounds like a cop-out answer, but at this point, with the diversification, the same way that I'm fishing on every project now, every GC becomes relevant, where before it wasn't that way, and it wasn't healthy, right?
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit today. My son had a great, my son runs operations here in the business, Gary Arkin. And, I was telling him, we tend to be around gate precast a lot. Gate precast, many would say, is a competitor of ours. We don't look at them as a competitor. He said, we're kind of like a remora cleaning off, the skin of the shark, because they can handle these large scopes that our plant cannot handle from a storage standpoint. And they go and they tell the customer, they tell the GC, like Styles, for instance, they're going to do Jim Ram. There's 6 million scope on that of panels. And they told Jim Ram, but we don't want to do the benches. We can't handle all these architectural benches. So we end up with a $2 million contract, just from, being in that sort of same space. What we've done is we've decided that these people aren't competitors, but they're strategic partners. So all these other precasters, because we have a unique product offering here, and the things that we excel at, panel jobs, but on smaller jobs, benches and curbs and things like that, are things these guys don't want to do. When they know there's a certified plant in the state of Florida that's specializing in that work, they now are referring it off. And so we can all be together on the same thing. So instead of poking the bear, right, instead we create strategic alliances with what people would think would be competitors. And instead we have a very healthy relationship with them. We sometimes compete with them. There's going to always be that margin.
Yeah. But I love that. I love that. There's so much out there, I don't see I totally agree with you with that perspective. And it's also a way to have fun. Sometimes you could be at capacity or close to capacity, or you have an opportunity because of your resume or of your relationships. It could be a little bit bigger, and you either turn it down or you take it without really having all the strategic acumen to be able to do it. But instead, you could partner and align with somebody that is going to perform well. You both can make money, and instead of making 100% of nothing, you can share the goods. I think it's beautiful.
It was a nice day when we found out that Gate was referring us to customers. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that you're being respected by your peers. Obviously, we have a lot of respect for them with the things that they do, but yeah, it's there is a lot of work to go around, and like I said, I think we've worked really hard to create a vision. You had mentioned earlier about gratitude. There's a tremendous amount of gratitude that I have every day, because we have been to the brink 2 or 3 times over the years, because it's a hard journey to try to do what I've done, to go from 1 million to 15 and hopefully 20, and going from 1 product line to 6, to say that, oh, this is easy, everybody can do it, it's a lie. It
Right.
takes time to get there. Everybody can do it. That part's true. But to say that it's easy, it's not. I mean, it's definitely been, not necessarily for the faint of heart. But the fact that this year we're driving revenue in all 6 product lines. I get to walk into work every day and see my son. I get to go home to a very special woman. 2 years ago, I had major back surgery. I am completely pain-free, and I turn 62 next week.
That's awesome.
How do you not have gratitude for life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Talk about divine intervention. We should have failed so many times, and yet we're here.
Yes.
And yes, I do think that there are times that when you live by what Ichiko's Roddy had asked, what's the right thing to do? And if you always treat your people and your vendors and your customers with that mentality, somehow you keep getting a next chance.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a tremendous amount of gratitude, because it does take some luck. It does take some.
And I was telling someone the same thing. And you have this vision, and we take on this journey, the journey of entrepreneurship. I compare it with having a child, right? You don't know how this child is going to come out. You don't know. The one thing hopefully, that you are married and committed to seeing this outcome, this child, in the most successful way, right? You to take them to, you have the best ideas, the best thoughts, the best dreams. The same thing is with when you become an entrepreneur. The only difference is that the entrepreneurship, we have the choice of keep going or giving up, because the amount of challenges that you could not have planned for are, I mean, sometimes I walk into my business, I'm like, okay, it's a surrender experience, constantly surrendering to the will of God. And I say it, if without God I couldn't do this. I tell you, in a lot of times it's not, you don't get rewarded the way you thought you were going to be rewarded. When you start a business, you think you're going to have more time, more free time, and the rewards, because you think the financial reward is going to be there, right? The way you anticipated. There's so much that has to happen in order for you to make, I don't want to say guarantee, but kind of to see that. And it's more, I really believe it's more about the transformation that you get, and they keep going, and who you become in the process. And if you do that enough, everything else that you wanted is going to be there. Because look at you. To me, out of all these meetings, the biggest celebration I have for you, based on my experience, yes, I celebrate the business, the revenue, the product lines. All of that is wise and smart and amazing. But having your son, integrating him into your business in a way that he feels ownership, but he's also creating his own, being his opportunity to be his identity. You guys get to have fun in this process. It tells me how much you have transformed yourself and how much you have grown, because to come from where you're coming and allow and give him that opportunity, that room for him to grow and become his own self in your business, it tells me how much you have changed yourself to allow that to happen. So I don't really have to talk to you that much to know that it hasn't been an easy journey. But
Oh,
that to me is a super celebration, because a lot of times us business owners, especially in our industry, and if somebody your age, it's that has been in this industry for a long time, hears me, many times you don't get to have a wife, or you have the business maybe, but you lost your relationship, you lost your relationship with your kids. They don't want to know anything about construction, don't even, because they blame construction for everything, every negative emotion they had associated with their parents.
right.
But what it tells me is that you might have started in that route, but you definitely have made so many changes in yourself to get you to where to where you are. And to me, that deserves celebration. It makes me respect you so much, and I really am grateful for this opportunity to talk to you, and honored by the fact that you took the time to be in this podcast and share your experience. Because out of all the technical expertise you have, the biggest one for me is to be able to hear an example of a man your age, that looks young. You take care of you take care of your health, you love and appreciate your wife, and you love and appreciate your son and your employees, so, and your former employers. So that is a beautiful news for me, because our industry has someone like you to mirror, so they can be greater and better.
I appreciate
Thank you
that.
so much.
So it's I will say this, you take these disc assessments and everything, and so I took the assessments, and we had trained some people on reading them. I didn't get trained on reading it because I don't, I'm not in that part of the business. But when they came back and they told me, they said, I am not what they refer to as economically motivated, right? When you actually look at what our purpose is to make the world a more beautiful place, right? And if I were ever to retire, my next job would be teaching algebra in college. I like teaching. And so really for me, it's the greatest thing in the world, because, I have 75 captive students here, right? Because it's a chance, for me, I just have to make it to the grave, right? My real obligation is to provide for the other 75 people that are here. Is the vision that I'm creating of a business sustainable to support the lives and families of these other 75 people, right? That's what's the important thing here. And so, that's what keeps me going every day. And then the ability for each of these people to drive around South Florida, Orlando, Tampa, wherever it is that we work, and say, we made the world a more beautiful place. It didn't say we made more money. Now, you got to make money to be able to make the world a more beautiful place. I understand that's implicit, but it's really, the idea is, do we make the world a more beautiful place? And everything that we participate in has that ability to do it. The jobs we do are gorgeous. And but it is that's really the whole lesson. And then just the last part of it is that I kind of feel like life is the old greyhound racing. We're greyhounds that are chasing the mechanical rabbit, right? It's never designed to catch the rabbit. When I was at GL, there were people there that when I got there, I said, I hope one day I'm going to be like them. 15 years later, I left, and I was like them 15 years earlier. 15 years later, they had also grown. The most important lesson for everybody to understand is that this is not something that there's a finite end with in terms of learning. We will forever be learning, and we're going to forever be wrong. We're going to forever be right, and we're going to forever do the right thing. And so people just have to understand, it is truly, we're going to chase that rabbit. We never want to catch it. But that's what keeps us motivated and will keep us doing more and exciting and different and interesting things to make the world a more beautiful place.
Absolutely. And I only would add to that some people don't choose to grow. And if you're not growing, you're dying. So life takes you out of the game. Right. And so you're absolutely right. And we're always growing in many different areas, many different directions. It's not, your business makes you grow, your spouses, your relationships, in that purpose and that vision that you have so clearly identified is what gives you that clarity to continue to reinvent yourself at all the different stages in life. And I love what you said. You are never going to retire, because it's not even about retirement, it's calibrating, right? You're recalibrating. And so I celebrate you. Thank you so much. I'm very honored that we're partners in a project. It's going to be beautiful. We're making that Miami Beach project a beautiful Surfside. So
it's where I grew up. I went to 85th Street Beach, and that's on 96. I love it. I love it. I'm doing a project with you where I grew up. I love it.
Yes. Thank you so much, and we'll meet over there. We'll have a follow-up podcast when you're installing your product. I would love to do that.
Fantastic, Patricia. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening to me. Sorry.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do for our industry, and thank you for the lessons for the people that are listening. Thank you so much. Don't forget about subscribing to the Thriving in Construction, the podcast.
It will be done before this day is up.
Okay. Thank you so much. God bless you.
You will. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.